Grooming is the term we use in the UK to describe the way in which a child abuser gains the trust of a child or a young person. So how they put themselves into that child's life, into a position of trust with their parents or something like this, or how they get that young person to come to them. Man who was our next door neighbour. Many children from the village would come to his house because he let us play with his dogs. He always gave us sweets and toys. He would do really fun things like drive us around the garden in his tractor, you know. So this is all grooming behaviour. This is making the young person trust the abuser, which is what then makes it so very hard for the child to talk about abuse if abuse happens. My sister and I were lucky in that we weren't abused by this man. He did later go to jail, however, so other children weren't as lucky as we were. But he had got himself into such a position of trust with all the different families that even when I thought something was wrong, I couldn't say, I had no way to talk about that. You couldn't, it was, you know, just this man, everybody loves him, it can't be, I thought I was sort of wrong, you know. So that's what I wanted to bring into the story, was the way in which Frances can't talk. She's never been able to talk about what happened to her, you know. She literally doesn't have the words and doesn't think anyone will believe her because this person is someone that she trusts so much and that everybody loves. So it's a really difficult subject. And I think maybe if it hadn't been for this experience I had growing up, I would have found it a lot harder to imagine what that was like. But having been through it, it was very hard to recreate. It's hard to describe, you know, that process of what happens. But yeah, it was a tricky one. I think the memories and then the book. Another source of inspiration for the story was actually a case I found out about visiting Australia. I found out I went to Melbourne Old Jail just to visit, and they have storyboards up of some of the inmates there. And I learned about a man called Colin Ross who was actually executed in the 1920s for abusing and killing a little girl. And it was a terrible miscarriage of justice. The police virtually fabricated the case against him. And he was actually granted a full pardon in 2008, posthumous pardon, which meant that it was this double tragedy of he was an innocent man who was hanged, but also the real person who attacked this little girl was never brought to justice. So that was kind of, reading about that case and finding out about that case kind of like made me think of this situation I had when I was a child. The reason this man was pardoned was because an investigative journalist called Kevin Morgan looked into his case, looked into the cold case, and basically proved that it almost certainly wasn't Colin Ross. He was innocent, and that made me think about, you know, what had happened to me as a child, you know, and how there are hints that possibly it was someone within the girl's own family that had actually done this to her. Not her immediate family, but distant family. And that made me think about this man, you know, who lived so close to us and who was so trusted by us all, you know. And so the two kind of came together in my head, and I think that really shaped the story as I was working on it. And it does feel quite personal to me, this book.